What's up, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Sooners Live. We got a running back that's injured. What does that mean for the depth chart for the Sooners this spring? We'll talk about it and more on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. And welcome to Locked On Sooners Live. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. And we are here every Monday night, 9 p.m. Central Time, to interact and hang out with y'all, talking Oklahoma Sooners athletics. We'll start on the football field because Jovantae Barnes was seen at practice on a scooter with his foot wrapped, and that's never a great sign if you're a running back when you got a foot wrapped and you're riding a scooter. So, I mean, we're still 6 months or 5 months out from the opening of the 2023 season. At the same time, given that there's so much pressure on a kid like Jovantae Barnes to kind of be the lead back heading into the season, you kind of need him out there so he's getting more acclimated to the offense, having a better and deeper understanding of it, Josh.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, it's obviously disappointing. You'd like to have Jovantae Barnes out there just getting a further grasp of what this offense looks like. I mean, throughout his freshman season, you would imagine has a pretty good feel for who and what Oklahoma is and what a Jeff Lebby offense looks like and what his role is and will be going forward in said offense. But it would obviously behoove Oklahoma. It would be better for Oklahoma if Jovantae Barnes was fully healthy throughout the spring, but it doesn't sound like or look like that is going to be the case for OU. So, you know, the other part of that equation is this, John. You don't, for someone, especially like Jovantae Barnes, that, again, got the most snaps, I believe, right, of any freshman that came into Oklahoma last season. So somebody that was heavily involved, you really don't have to push the envelope with throughout the spring. If there's something to nurse, this is the time in the calendar year to nurse it. It does open the door, though, for some other guys, namely, I would say, Mr. Gavin Sawchuk.
Yeah, you think Gavin Sawchuk's probably going to be involved pretty heavily anyway, as DeMarco Murray, Jeff Lebby want to run multiple backs out there. I guess for me, it's like, yes, he has a good grasp of it, but given that he's going to probably take on a bigger role, I'd like to see him get more, pass blocking reps, pass pro reps, getting more opportunities in the passing game, because he really wasn't that involved in the passing game. And this is kind of the time to iron some of those things out. But you're right. He was heavily involved. He knows how to run the football. That's not an issue for him. He can do that at the collegiate level. It's a matter of just getting the small things, the little things, fine tuning those things a little bit more to be better prepared to take on a heavy workload. You mentioned Gavin Sawchuk. I think another guy that you might see a big bump in practice reps is going to be like Caleb Hicks. That dude's a guy he's arrived on campus looking like a collegiate football player. He's not going to require a whole lot of bulking up. He's ready to go as is. You can throw him out there in certain circumstances, give him the rock, 8 to 10 times a game, and just let him pound on people. So I think he'll get a boost in opportunities. Marcus Major, obviously he's back. That's going to be a good thing for him to see more potentially first team reps than he might not have otherwise seen. But, they're going to have a lot of guys, and Oklahoma never hurts at the running back position. So don't mistake this for, oh no, Oklahoma's running back situation is all of a sudden in dire straits. It's more just the guy that we're expecting to kind of be the lead dog out there. You kind of want to have him out there. It'd be the same thing if Dylan Gabriel went down at quarterback. Yes, you got Jackson Arnold waiting in the wings. Quarterback looks pretty good. At the same time, you kind of want the guy that's got the most experience being available for practice reps to continue to get better as you move on towards the season.
What does it mean, though, for Gavin Sawchuk? Something like this opens the door a little bit for somebody to maybe get more totes, get more reps throughout the spring. The fact that Barnes and Megwa and Chapman McCown, there were actually 3 running backs for Oklahoma that did not participate in drills, but they were all suited up too. So Megwa, McCown, and Barnes were all fully suited up. So that part I would toss into the category as good news for Oklahoma. It doesn't seem to be serious with Jovantae Barnes. It seems to be in the realm of let's not push it and let's not aggregate things any further than where they're currently at right now. So that part's good. But again, the other half of the equation is, okay, yes, opportunity is now here for Sawchuk, for Hicks, like you mentioned. So one of these younger guys and, somebody that came in with Jovantae Barnes in Sawchuk, actually, I guess a little bit later, right? Because Barnes was in the spring and then Sawchuk was a summer arrival. So now the door swings open a little bit. And I've been telling you all along that I think by the end of next season, just based on the flash and sizzle of one Mr. Sawchuk, I'm buying Sawchuk to finish as Oklahoma's lead running back, even though Barnes goes into this offseason as Oklahoma's leading returning rusher.
So you're buying what happened in the Cheez-It Bowl as projections to the 2023 season? No, Gavin Sawchuk is a great player. He proved it, in that one appearance. He showed out against a really good defense that had a lot of their guys that were coming back that could have gone to the NFL. I mean, they didn't have a whole lot of guys opt out of that game. So it was a really impressive performance for Gavin Sawchuk. I like the dude. I think he's a great player. I think he's going to be a great player. He's got a lot of tools. One of the things that we kind of complained a little bit about with Eric Gray, given the season that he had, was he had a hard time running away from guys, right? Like he'd get out into the open field, but he'd get tracked down a lot of the times. Well, that's not at all the same thing for Gavin Sawchuk. Sorry for I just got so excited talking about Gavin Sawchuk's speed that I got away from myself a little bit. That's not at all the same. Gavin Sawchuk, he's going to run away from dudes, like legit track speed, one of the fastest players on the team. He's going to be a huge impact player for this team, both in the running game and in the passing game. I just imagine Jeff Lebby just drawing up scenarios like Coach Klein from Waterboy, trying to figure out ways to get Gavin Sawchuk the ball in space, because that speed is dangerous. It kills. And you got to have guys that can break it every time they touch the football. And he's one of those dudes that he's a threat to score every time he touches the ball. So it is a big opportunity for him to earn more of the role than what he would, or earn a bigger role than what he might have had otherwise. With Jovantae Barnes gone, he can maybe get out there and prove, okay, well, I can be a 15 to 20 carry a game guy. I can take 20, 25 touches. So this is a really big opportunity for him. I mean, we saw Jovantae Barnes kind of take advantage of, having a big workload in the spring last year in the spring game. Like they gave him a ton of work in the spring game, and he used that to propel himself into a big time role in the fall. Gavin Sawchuk might do the same thing this spring. A guy like Caleb Hicks, Dalen Smothers. I don't know if physically Dalen Smothers will be as prepared as maybe a Caleb Hicks might be, but again, speed. Granted, just mentioned it. Speed kills. Dalen Smothers has that in spades too. So I can imagine that they'll try to figure out ways to get him on the field in opportunities and give him a chance to show that speed off a few times here and there. I don't think he'll, be a guy that breaks into the, top 2 on the running back depth chart, but Dalen Smothers could be a guy that gets a few packages similar to the way they used Gavin Freeman at times last year.
Hopefully, by the way, that is an either early Coach Klein or a late Bourbon Bowl Coach Klein drawing up the plays, and not the in-between lost trying to find my way Coach Klein. Hopefully this is the Coach Klein that's properly hydrated, etc. Right there from the water boy. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch how this takes shape with these couple of young running backs coming in. For Smothers and Hicks, this is good news, right? Couple of guys that are early enrollees here and have a chance to get more reps than probably they were going to if Jovantae Barnes was fully healthy. So there's ways that you can always spin this thing. Again, I think the most important thing is that it wasn't Barnes strictly out there walking around with a cast on and crutches. Obviously he was padded up, so that part's good. So it could be ultimately good for Oklahoma. And I expect Oklahoma, look, I'm pro Sawchuk, and just based on his electricity, John, win this job. But I think you're in really, really good hands with both Barnes and Sawchuk. To me, that's the obvious 1-2 in whichever order it winds up for next season. Though, again, this little situation, just to just a sliver of daylight here in the spring for a couple of these guys like Hicks and Smothers to maybe wow the coaching staff a little bit ahead of schedule.
Yeah, we'll see how that all transpires and if Jovantae Barnes is going to be available for the spring game on April 22nd. We'll follow that storyline as it develops. But coming up next, let's talk about an offensive line that's switching sides a little bit. We'll talk about that after I tell you about Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar ever. If you haven't tried it, you're missing out. It's great. Tastes fantastic. And it's great for you. Low carb, low calorie, low sugar, high in protein, and they got so many great flavors that are 100% covered in chocolate as well. Coconut brownie, chunk, coconut almond, mint brownie, peanut butter brownie, salted caramel, so many great flavors. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKS15, get 15% off your next order over at built.com. So Josh, just watching the Oklahoma Sooners social media on Twitter, they threw out their mic'd up segment for this week, and it was McKade Mettauer that was mic'd up. And just as we do, we overanalyze these little highlight, vignettes just to see what we can gather from it. And it looks like McKade Mettauer is switching from left guard to right guard for this season. And I will say I got a little confirmation on that from Tyler Guyton, who liked my tweet talking about it. So just, little humble brag there. But I thought it was interesting because McKade played left guard last year, bumping over to right guard. I like the balance that Bill Bedenbaugh is going with, because if we expect Walter Rouse to play left tackle, you're still going to have to figure out, okay, who's the other guard aside from McKade Mettauer? Well, if you have Rouse and Mettauer next to each other, and then you have Guyton, who's going to be in his first year starting, and then another first year starter at right guard, you're very imbalanced in your experience. But you get Guyton, Mettauer, Andrew Raym, presumably, and then whoever the left guard is. In the mic'd up segment, McKade kind of looks over the center and he says, save on, be physical. So right now, maybe it looks like Savon Bird is getting some of those first team reps. And then you got Walter Rouse. Of course, Savon could also be getting some of those first team reps at left tackle because Walter Rouse is wearing the blue jersey right now. He might not be getting a lot of physical contact. So just a really interesting thought. And I really like the approach of Bill Bedenbaugh and the coaching staff on this front.
Well, you know me, big fan of Savion Bird and his physicality. He is something that I think is going to be special potentially for Oklahoma if that's the direction this thing winds up going there. And obviously it seems like Tyler Guyton, based on your tweet, seems to be in approval of the move of McKade Mettauer out there to right guard instead of left. If you missed it, John did tweet, as he said, quote, I really like the move to put McKade next to Guyton. Lots of physicality on that side, and you get experience next to Tyler, and then whoever the left guard is plays next to Rouse. Good balanced approach. And oh, by the way, one Mr. Tyler Guyton liked the tweet. So I don't know, just saying that looks like he's a fan of it. So that's a lot of experience with McKade Mettauer. We'll see about center. Probably still lean Raym in that direction there, and should be a good spot. I mean, it's going to be an offensive line that's work in progress as we go, John. We can feel good about it. We can like what we have for now. I can be excited about the offensive tackles. I think that we saw some things that we liked in the Cheez-It Bowl from Guyton. Walter Rouse will arrive in Norman with a nice little starting pedigree out of the transfer portal, so that stabilizes you at one tackle. And then we'll see about how Schaefer stacks up for Oklahoma.
Yeah, so if Schaefer ends up being your left guard, that's pretty good. But then you've got guys kind of waiting in the wing also to prove themselves and see if they can push for a starting job as well. I mean, you're turning over 3/5 of your offensive line, and that's always a trick. Now, you got one of the best offensive line coaches in the country, maybe the best offensive line coach in the country in Bill Bedenbaugh. But still, there's a transition period that takes place when you're losing Anton Harrison. That's going to be a first-round draft pick. You're losing, Chris Murray, who's going to get drafted, probably a later-round pick, but he's going to get drafted. And you're losing Wanye Morris, who's probably going to be a top 100, top 150 pick. You can't lose that much talent off your offensive line and not experience some kind of a transition phase or maybe a bit of a drop-off even. But we'll see. I mean, again, Bill Bedenbaugh is great at what he does. He does a really good job at evaluating talent and putting that talent in the best position to succeed. So I have total faith that by the time that this team lines up in the fall, ready to play football, that we're going to have a pretty good idea of what this offensive line looks like. Now, we've also seen them in the past kind of rotate the offensive linemen for the first, 5-6 weeks of the season until they're able to figure out something and settle in on one group. But you got a lot of talented kids. Savion Byrd is one of them. Aaron Parks is another one. Jake Taylor, Jacob Sexton, they're also really good. Caden Green, just a really Joshua Bates at center, a lot of really good offensive linemen. And that doesn't even mention, Heath Ozida and Logan Howland, the other, true freshmen that are on campus as well. So it's going to be an interesting group to watch, but I think there's a lot of potential, and I think they could come up with several combinations along the offensive line and figure out what works best. Josh, any other thoughts on just offensive line or anything that you've noticed from kind of stuff coming out of spring practice that's kind of grabbed your attention, I guess is the best way to put that?
Not necessarily. I would just say that, what we left last season with the offensive line was, hey, pass protection probably is going to be a little bit of a work in progress with this group. Let's hope that the addition of Rouse can stabilize that a little bit. We'll see how Schaefer fits in. I mean, that's somebody that could step right in and be at a guard position for you if need be for Oklahoma. Is he versatile enough to play some center for OU? Could that be an option?
Sorry, who's that? I was responding to a comment in the chat.
No big deal. Caleb Schaefer. Is that somebody that
I don't know if he's got any center experience? I mean, like Rouse, like he's started for 4 years and all at the same position. So I think, they could work it. I'm sure that if they have a mind to it, they could probably figure it out. But again, he's played so much guard. I wouldn't want to move him. I'd want him to become one of my starting guards.
Well, I'm just thinking that now all of a sudden you've got a pretty good little situation of guards, which, hey, look, having 4 or 5 offensive guards that you feel good about is not the worst problem to have, because attrition up front is a real thing, right? Whether it's offensive tackle, offensive guard, center, whatever. So not the worst thing if you've got somebody that's a couple of guys that are second string that you feel like aren't far away from maybe being first string guys for you. So not that you have to take a guard and make him a center, but if that center position, if Rame and company there, if you don't feel like that has totally turned the corner for you, John, then maybe one of these guys at guard could be an option there. That's something you tinker with a little bit throughout the spring and into fall, because it feels like now all of a sudden, with McKade Mettauer, with Savion Byrd getting a little bit older, with the addition of a Schaefer, with Taylor on the inside. I mean, maybe you've got a little bit of a surplus there at guard that you could tinker around with a little bit.
Well, and I think that's why they're moving Nate Anderson from guard to center. We're seeing, that's where a lot of talk is right now on him. I mean, he was the top rated player in their 2020 class, I believe, and really hasn't seen the field much as a guard. But if they make the transition, move him to center, perhaps that's where he could have an impact. We'll see. Mr. John, what's up, Mr. John? Great name. He asked the question, who can back up Stogner at tight end? Will Helms be ready for the fall? It sounds like Helms and Llewellyn will both be ready by fall. But it's a great question, because that is a concern. You got to have multiple tight ends. That's part of the reason they brought in Blake Smith. They also brought in the kid from Cameron University out in Lawton. I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but the former basketball star, now going to move to tight end as well. We'll see if he'll be up to speed enough to be able to have an impact for the Sooners in the fall. But I think your 2022 signees in Helms and Llewellyn are going to be back and ready to go come fall.
And let's hope so. I mean, that would be great to know that both of those two gentlemen have gotten healthy, and then you get a full fall ball with each of those two, and all of a sudden maybe one of those guys can be your top option behind in Austin Stogner there. McIntyre, I don't know if that's someone that can step right in and play for Oklahoma straight away. Maybe they can, maybe that's a possibility for Cade McIntyre. I don't know there. So probably it would be good news if either Caden Helms or Jason Llewellyn full speed for both of those guys, and one of those guys really ascends and grabs that number 2 role. Those would be the likeliest candidates, right, behind Austin Stogner.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, they're the guys that you're bringing in and hoping to be your 2 and 3 tight ends, and they might play different roles a little bit, but you'll be able to deploy them, in similar ways. Josh, just real quick, what do you think about April Fool's Day? Are you are you like me on social media? So here's where I stand. Social media, I'm not a big fan of it because it's real easy to get caught up in like some breaking news thing. Like I first saw that General Booty's moving to tight end thing on my way to coach my daughter's soccer team. So I'm not even thinking that it's April Fool's Day. And I'm like, holy crap. How does this even going to work? He's not even that big. How can they're not going to play him at tight end. And then like, as the day rolled along and I hadn't gotten a chance to write a piece about it or tweet about it, thankfully, I realized, oh crap, it's April Fool's.
Yeah. Well, yes, that's good that you caught that before there was any serious reporting happening right there. I don't mind a good April Fool's joke. I think it's fun, and obviously General Booty in the pantheon of great Sooner names, I mean, would have to be toward the top of the list in that regard.
Yeah. So then, what did you think about David Stone's commitment, quote unquote, commitment post on April Fool's Day? That had a lot of people riled up.
Yeah. Again, someone that seems to really be enjoying the recruiting process and is not taking it super seriously at times. Yep. So, good for him. But obviously a recruitment like that, where everybody wants this kid on campus, 5-star kid, there's some emotions there, has the propensity to maybe result in some folks being a little bit upset.
Yeah. Don't play with us, man. Don't play with us like that. Like that's just rough. It really is. But yes, enjoy yourself, enjoy the time. When I looked back at it and I saw it again after the fact, I didn't see it until Sunday. Again, thankfully, because I mean, it's so easy to just get caught up in that. I'm like, oh crap, now I got a job to do. I got to go write a post, got to get a reaction post. I got to go talk about what it means for the Sooners. I got all these things I got to do, but I didn't see it till the next day. So thankfully my mind was put at ease. And again, I'm glad he's having fun with it. Just please commit to Oklahoma, Mr. Stone. That's all we ask. Anyway, on 3, they had a list of 5 teams that they considered winners of March on the recruiting trail. And the Oklahoma Sooners were one of those teams, getting a commitment from Kevin Sperry in the 2025 class and getting a commitment from Jeremiah Newcomb, who we've talked about on this show for the 2024 cycle, Oklahoma's first commitment of the 2024 cycle. Josh, I agree. I think they were big winners to get that quarterback locked in for the 2025 class. Absolutely huge. And then to finally break the ice and get a kid who we love, a talented dude who's going to bring a lot of edge to the secondary in Jeremiah Newcomb. Again, a big win for the Sooners. And hopefully it's going to kind of kickstart what could be a great April, May, June, July.
Well, and, obviously kind of all of that got started with Kevin Sperry in the 2025 class for Oklahoma. So I don't know nationally who the other couple of schools maybe in contention for that would be, but definitely it was a great March for Oklahoma after we've kind of been waiting and waiting. When is that first domino going to fall for Oklahoma in 2024? And crazily enough, it was a 2025 domino that fell before 2024. And then I think those in the know, John, obviously you've got Aaron Flowers that's trending away on East. I know some people are posting and asking about that, since it doesn't feel like Aaron Flowers is going to be coming to Oklahoma. I'm looking here. Brandon Drum has the crystal ball in recently to USC. And then, but up and down though, there's plenty of other crystal balls that came into Oklahoma throughout the month of March, and not just the commitment of Newcomb, but there's some other momentum that feels like it's bubbling out there. And I think the recruiting experts, John, are in the know that behind the scenes, though you might haven't had that avalanche of commitments yet, probably Oklahoma's made some serious headway in a lot of these recruitments across the board.
Yeah, and I think the next one that we get is going to be Michael Hawkins. I don't have any inside intel on that. I just feel really good about where they stand and the relationship that Jeff Lebby's built. Obviously, being the legacy, that helps a lot too. TCU is a factor in this, and it matters. The relationship that he has with Kendall Briles is a big part of it, and that's the reason he's considering it. But given that Michael's kind of been trending toward Oklahoma for quite some time now. I just don't imagine the move for Kendall Briles to TCU is going to be enough to dissuade him from going to Oklahoma. And he's going to commit on Saturday, April 8th. Haven't seen a commitment time on that, but I'm sure we'll get that soon. And he'll probably be on one of the major, recruiting sites, making his announcement live. It's been a recruitment that's been one of the more intriguing ones of the last few months, especially as the 2024 cycle is concerned. But yeah, I think Michael Hawkins is going to commit. They're asking, Devon Mitchell or Michael Hawkins, who's going to commit first. I think it's Hawkins, but I don't think that Mitchell's far behind. Everything's trending that direction for the Sooners. They're tight. They're really close. It seems like it's just a matter of time on Mitchell. And I think he's probably waiting for Hawkins to go ahead and make that decision first. And then he'll make his commitment known. Still waiting. There's a buzz out there that he's going to reclassify to 2024. None of that's official yet. I'm not sure at what point that can become official, but it seems like that's the way it's heading that direction.
Man, just looking back through here, there's a nice little set of crystal balls that came in for Oklahoma throughout the month of March. So it could be about ready to happen sometime pretty soon for Oklahoma. Obviously had your junior day and everything. Throughout the spring, kind of get to open up the visit season. So with all of that behind us, I think it's fair to have Oklahoma as your recruiting winner for March. I think everybody would like to see a couple more in the pocketbook, as it were, for Oklahoma, or just in the commitments column for OU. Pocketbook with NIL, maybe the wrong phrasing these days, right? Oklahoma, I don't think just sitting out here buying every single recruit, but it'd be nice for Oklahoma to cash in on what seems like they have a nice little set of momentum out of this past month. And I'm sure they will. We've said that. That's what we expect. This is kind of the timeline for Oklahoma's recruitment calendar, if you will, going forward. 1 or 2 at the start of the spring. By the time you get to the end of the spring, probably that number's 5, 6, 7, whatever. And then boom, big number, I think, throughout the summer, John, before we even kick next fall season off.
Yeah, Jim Bird here talks about Peoples probably gone, Stacey Gage maybe back on the table. I have a hard time figuring out what DeMarco Murray is doing at the running back position, because we felt like they were pretty well settled in on Isaiah Mose, Caden Durham, and Xavier Robinson. And then lo and behold, the Sooners come out and they offer the number 1 running back in the state of California by the name of Nathaniel Frazier. And you look at this dude and he's a grown man. Like, this is not just a guy that needs to come to Oklahoma and then put on weight. Like, he's ready to go. Like, based on what he looks like against high school kids, he looks like Derrick Henry. The way Derrick Henry, excuse me. So I don't know what Oklahoma is going to do with the running back position. I thought I had a good handle on it. I still feel pretty good that Caden Durham's going to be a big part of that. And it seems like they really, really like Xavier Robinson. But everywhere else, I have no clue how the running back position is going to land for the Sooners.
Well, and, if you can land one of these high profile guys and all of a sudden somebody else is waffling a little bit, I do think, as we've discussed in the past, it's hey, you're either on the train when it leaves the station or you're not. And DeMarco Murray's shown us, I'm not even worried about running back. He's
right.
going to get a couple of blue chip running backs in this class. Who they are and what those names ultimately look like, and if they're slam dunks later, okay, well, we'll see, right? But whether it's Gage, Durham, a couple of names beyond that, John, he's going to get a couple of blue chip running backs in this class. It may be one running back that you would put in the development type category. Maybe they don't have the same cachet coming into Oklahoma as the other two, but man, running back, that's just not something I think that Oklahoma fans need to be particularly worried about. And oh, by the way, I think you got a couple of potential superstar running backs already on campus, and we haven't even gotten a peek at who Caleb Hicks and Dalen Smothers are on campus for OU just yet, John.
Yeah, there's a lot of talented players in the running back room, and you hit the nail on the head. They're not going to have any trouble coming up with running backs under DeMarco Murray. They're going to find really good running backs, and it's just a matter of time, before we start seeing the running back dominoes fall in the 2024 cycle. Whether they take 2 or 3, that's kind of the question. And who those guys end up being, that's kind of where some of that lands. Kim Hurst was asking how many 5-star crystal balls are there out there. The ones that I've seen, you can go to David Stone. Of course, those are from back in the summer. There are more recent crystal balls that favor Michigan State, but I still think Oklahoma's in a really good spot there. You got Williams Nwaneri. Those are recent in the last month. A lot of projections coming out for Williams Nwaneri to Oklahoma. And then you got Bryant Wesco, originally 4-star, was projected to Oklahoma, and now is a 5-star in the top 247, a top 10 player in the cycle. I've said he reminds me a lot of CeeDee Lamb. That might be an exaggeration. I'm going to stand by it. He's a really good player that does a lot of CeeDee Lamb-like things. So they're still building their 2024 board, but where they're at with some of these 5-star guys, I think is in a really good spot. Now it's just a matter of closing the deal, getting those commitments, and then getting those signings.
Well, and there's a number of other guys, John, that they're not 5-star kids, but they're really high 4-stars. And oh, by the way, we're starting to sniff the home stretch in this, believe it or not, we're kind of starting to get toward the end of this 2024 cycle. And yet there's going to be a decent bit of shuffling in terms of the recruiting rankings at 24/7, at Rivals, at On3, at ESPN between now and then. You know this, John. I know this. The numbers, the recruiting stars, they will change between now and then. So some guys can go up a nice little ways. Some guys can come down just a little bit. So I'm, looking out here. You've got crystal ball in for Jaden Hardy. Isaiah McMorris, I don't know that he gets a 5-star status, John. Probably not. But I think that's somebody that you and I both looked at and said, okay, there's a chance before it's all said and done, he's a 4-star kid for you. And there's other names we could go down the board and talk about too, that there's crystal balls out there for Oklahoma that, okay, it's not your bona fide 5-star kid right now, but could be very, very high 4-star kids and flirting with 5-star by the end of this process. But you nailed, obviously, the 3 that are on the board as we currently stand today.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where they're at. Again, they're going to be in really good spots for these 3. Somebody mentioned in the comments to look out for Texas on Wesco. And yeah, I mean, you always got to watch out for Texas. They're a really good recruiting school. I mean, they could flip guys, or they could end up pulling guys that you are, heavily targeting, but Oklahoma's a really good recruiting school too. So Texas got to worry about Oklahoma, right? Eric comes in hot with a little inside joke inside info on the David Stone April Fool's Day joke. Says David Stone was talked in the April Fool's joke by a Norman North player named Zane Prater. He sent it to me too and played me bad. He thought it was funny. Not funny, Zane.
Though.
Yeah, Zane. Zane sounds like a dude that would also like to play a lot of not funny jokes on a lot of people.
He's going to be a nice little football player in his own right, by the way, at Norman North.
Yeah, I mean, Josh knows all about that. But yeah, that's a fun little tidbit there. But hey, I'm glad they had a good time getting everybody all riled up. I'm sure it got not just Oklahoma fans riled up, but Michigan State and Miami and A&M and USC fans all across the country really digging it. Nigel Smith absolutely could end up as a 5-star. The dude's talented, very talented, got a ton of athleticism, got a ton of physicality, can get after the passer, everything you want in a defensive lineman.
Za'Davian Sims, another guy that, I don't know that he's going to finish as a 5-star kid, John, but we've had this conversation in the past. And I think this is, until we see all of these dominoes finalized, the 4 big names, right, that are on the board for Oklahoma in terms of defensive line prospects in this class: Nigel Smith, Za'Davian Sims, and obviously the 2 big ones, David Stone and Williams Nwaneri. If you get both Stone and Nwaneri on paper, okay, 5-star kids, and let's all jump for joy. Yes, thank you, Dick Vitale, jumping for joy, backflips, PTPers, whatever, right? Insert your phrase here. But it's those other 2 guys, Nigel Smith and Za'Davian Sims, that could both equally in their own right surprise us. And I don't even know if it'd be that much of a surprise. Maybe that's silly when you're talking about high 4-star kids that, again, with Smith could be a 5-star. They're a little bit less heralded right now on the recruiting trail, but by the time it's all said and done, I've been saying this a lot, John, maybe those are the two that wind up bigger stars than the other two. Or maybe you just get all four and it winds up being a historic defensive line haul for OU. That's the best possibility.
Yeah, and it looks like Sims is going to be a Mel Tucker special coming into the state of Oklahoma and grabbing an Oklahoma stud. But when we talked with Kevin Sperry about a month ago after his commitment, we asked him about some of the dudes that he works out with over at C4 in Durant. And Zadavian Sims was the dude that he mentioned as the guy that he wants to work out with, the one that has the best workouts, the hardest work ethic, dude that just grinds in the gym. So that's a guy that's going to continue to get better and better and better. You get him into a college strength and conditioning program, Zadavian Sims is going to flourish because that's what he wants to do. He wants to work out. He wants to grind. And that's the kind of players you want to have on your team, but you can't win them all, unfortunately. But it does look like Oklahoma is very well positioned to land 3 of the 4 names that you mentioned, Josh, and Nwaneri Stone and Nigel Smith. If they could pull Sims and get all 4, man, that'd be banging. That'd be huge for them.
What would surprise you the most about this class? Can I tee off on this first?
Sure.
I think what would surprise me the most about this class is if Oklahoma, 3 of those 4 defensive line targets, if they can do that would be surprising, right? Just because we haven't seen Oklahoma do that. We've seen Todd Bates do that in the past. We've seen that track record exist at Clemson. And we know, look, Oklahoma's got a rich history of some of the best defensive linemen that have ever played college football. Obviously the Selman brothers, and then you get into Gerald McCoy and you think of Tommy Harris. I mean, there's been some great defensive linemen, and even in recent years, if not obviously Gerald McCoy and Tommy Harris, there's been some good pass rushers and some good players at Oklahoma. But to get 3 of those in a class, John, I mean, that's what we're talking about. Jumping tax brackets from, okay, very nice little neighborhood that we're living in right now, but all of a sudden we're living in, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air situation, right? All of a sudden we've really jumped the tax bracket here. So that would be, to me, a big time surprise. Not that Oklahoma can't land 1 or a couple of those guys, but if it turns into 3 would be, I think, the biggest surprise.
Yeah, I think for me, probably the biggest surprise would be if they don't end up with a top 10 class. They've proven that they can recruit as well as anybody in the country, aside from Georgia and Alabama. So if this cycle comes and goes and they're sitting outside the top 10, I'll be absolutely shocked. Now, a lot of that was buoyed by having a 5-star quarterback in Jackson Arnold a year ago. But if you're able to land Stone and Nwaneri, like that gives you enough of a push to be able to be a top 10 class. Not many, recruiting classes have 2 5-star kids and then end up outside the top 10. So that would be surprising to me. But again, I think that's a very low probability that they don't have a top 10 class because, again, Brent Venables has done such a good job recruiting wise, and he's got great recruiters working on his staff. We've got a great director of on-campus recruiting and Lee Davis. They're pulling out all the stops for these guys. There's a really good chance, and Kim, mentions it here. Fingers crossed for a top 3. I think they're well within the capabilities of landing a top 3 class, and could push, for a top 2, for a best class in the country, depending on how some of these things fall. They're right in the thick of it for some of the top names in the cycle. So why not Oklahoma?
I think that you gave a better answer than I gave, because that would be very shocking if Oklahoma doesn't have a very good class, which to me, anything outside the top 10 right now for Oklahoma, it's not a good class, right? I mean, relative to who Oklahoma is and what Oklahoma wants to be. And I think, not to just keep beating this drum and, I think, generally speaking, we've all moved on, right? But one of the things that I think bothered people so much about the way Lincoln Riley left was the comments that he made about USC relative to Oklahoma, and this perception by Lincoln Riley that you couldn't recruit the same way at OU. So Brent Venables and this staff, they've come in and they've totally quashed that idea. that you can't recruit big at Oklahoma. And it's been proven in the past that Oklahoma should be on the same playing field, even though the region that you're in is not as talent rich as, say, Georgia, just getting to sit at home. And if you get all of the top players in Georgia, chances are you're going to wind up with one of the best classes. Florida, Ohio, Texas, California. There's a couple of states we could pick, right? Oklahoma doesn't quite have that situation, but because of who Oklahoma is, John, you should always have a top 10 class. So I'm with you. I think that's well said by you, and this staff has already demonstrated for us. We've said it. But the way they closed that 22 class, very, very impressive. Obviously, what they brought and signed onto campus in the 23 class, if it's not top 10, that'd be shocking.
Here's another really, really good question from Pat Monet, is the way I'm going to pronounce that. I could be completely wrong on that. Sorry, Pat. Which player being recruited you think can make a Samuel Omosigho leap towards the end of the class? I got an answer for this, Josh. I'll go ahead and start. If Oklahoma ends up with Isaiah McMorris, who just got crystal balled to the Sooners, I think we could see a big rise out of him. The kid is fast, and he's really good, and he's very agile. He can play inside. He can play outside. We talked, in a little bit more in depth about him on our Sunday night show, Monday morning show, however you watch it. The dude is just really, really good football player. Reminds me a little bit, he's not the biggest dude. He's 6'1", but he can make the plays that a big wide receiver can make. He can go up and get the football, but where he's really special is in the short area field after the catch, because of his burst, because of his agility, because of his ability to make people miss. He's just special in that, right? Like, he just has that gift to be able to take a screen pass and turn it into 10, 15, 70 yards all of a sudden.
No, it's a good pick. It's a good pick. I might even go one class beyond this one and say Kevin Sperry, I think, has a chance to really finish as one of the top quarterbacks in his class. But if we're talking about this one, man, is it too low hanging fruit here if I tell you that Bryant Wesco is rated by 24/7 Sports as the number 9 player nationally, the number 3 wide receiver, and the number 1 player from the state of Texas, and yet in the composite rankings, he's all the way back at 66th nationally. So I would say, just across the board, by the time this cycle is done, Wesco is going to be regarded more like he is by 24/7 Sports versus the way he's regarded elsewhere, John.
Yeah, and I think that's very, very much a possibility. Another name I'll throw out there to you is Xavier Robinson. I think this is just a matter of people haven't seen him yet, and he's just done so much. And it seems like Oklahoma's kind of the target for him, and it's a good fit both sides. But I mean, he's just a 3-star player now, but how many 3-star running backs do you know that rush for 2,600 yards, win a state championship, and were the best player in the state during their junior year? It's kind of hard to fathom that. And so I think if we're talking about a Samuel Omosigho rise, like somebody who's kind of under-regarded and makes a big push, to the top 100, I could see that very much in the cards for Xavier Robinson. If he goes on the camp circuit and he goes, does the 7-on-7 stuff, and then has another big senior season for Carl Albert, I could very much see him as a top 100 top 100 player, maybe a top 10 running back, a 4-star guy, someone who's just continually seeing his, recruiting profile rise.
Who was our young man from Kansas that we were looking at? The offensive lineman.
Caden Massey.
Yeah, I think maybe that's a name to watch in that regard. Somebody brought up offensive linemen. So who on the board offensive line wise do you look at Oklahoma's gotta get? Is there a name or two?
Man, that's such a weird, position for Oklahoma, because I feel like I just have so much faith in Bill Bedenbaugh and his evaluation ability and his ability to develop offensive linemen that I just feel really good about where they're headed at offensive line. But it seems like kind of the biggest target right now is Casey Poe. He's had a crystal ball in or I think it was Parker put a crystal ball in for him back in October, November, and that's held pretty steady. Nobody's really made any predictions to contradict that. over the last 6-7 months. So a 4-star kid, very highly regarded, being heavily recruited by a lot of people. It's just a matter of, okay, will Oklahoma close the deal on that one again? Just, that's what we got to see from them in this cycle and down the road as well. But I really like where Oklahoma stands with him. I'm trying to just off the top of my head think of all the offensive linemen that they've offered so far. They're after all the big names too, but I can't quite remember any 5-star guys just off the top of my head.
I've got this list in front of me if you would like to hear some of these names.
Please.
So let's see here. There's all sorts of them. Brandon Baker, Daniel Calhoun. They're listed as warm for Grant Bricks. The list goes on and on and on. Bennett Warren is somebody that is considered warm. You mentioned Massey, Weston Davis. Who else can I share with you? There's others too, but obviously we'll get a better idea, I think, of that once the spring is over, John. I don't know that I have a good read on where offensive line recruiting is going at this juncture, but we'll know in a couple of months, and probably we're going to have several commitments.
Yeah, I'm also very intrigued by, Eddie Pierre-Louis, another Tampa Catholic kid. Oklahoma is doing a really good job recruiting Tampa, recruiting the Florida area. This dude's 6'3", already like 330, 340. He's ready made for the college football level. So that's an interesting one too. They're not just, as Pat mentions here, they're not just after the most highly regarded offensive linemen, but they're looking to develop kids. And you're exactly right. Logan Howland, a big, tall dude. Heath Ozida, a big, tall dude. Caden Green's got the big frame already. They're just looking to get dudes, and then they're going to develop them. And honestly, I think they're finding some diamonds in the rough too. Guys that maybe Alabama and Texas aren't after, maybe Georgia's not going after, but they like the traits that they see, and they're going to try and develop those traits into, highly capable offensive linemen as well. Yeah. Kim mentions, I think she's talking about Grant Bricks, the kid from Iowa that Oklahoma's, heavily, invested in, or not, I say invested. I don't know if they're heavily invested in him, but they're definitely
Nebraska
they have a vested interest in getting a commitment out of him as well.
Yeah, that'll be that's going to be an interesting little recruitment there. It'll be tough to beat out Iowa, I would imagine. Just a hometown kid, and Iowa's got a nice offensive line tradition. Though the allure, man, of playing at an Oklahoma, that's pretty hard to say no to as well. And OU has had a great offensive line to NFL tradition here, just the last quarter century, John, but even just here lately. And you're going to have a couple more this NFL draft go around. That works for Oklahoma. Nebraska, that's going to be interesting to watch how they play out in this recruitment. It feels like there's some steam there with that program. So that's going to be someone that, for somebody like this out of the state of Iowa or out of the state of Nebraska, Minnesota, not that that's where Oklahoma is trying to make its collective bread and butter, John, but for a player or two, it's going to be tougher to beat Nebraska up there right now, especially if they have success early now in this Matt Rule era. But there's some excitement, I think, around what they're doing. But they're in the mix there for Bricks. And then Penn State, obviously, third fiddle right behind a Michigan and Ohio State, but obviously they've done some positive things. It'd be tough to win there.
Yeah, and I got to be honest, if it wasn't Oklahoma, man, I love the Penn State unis. Those are just things of beauty. I don't know why, but being able to play in that Nittany navy and playing in the white with the stripe, I don't know. There's something cool about that. Anyway, which offensive player and then defensive player that is transferred into Oklahoma are you most excited about, and why, Josh?
Everybody's excited about Jason McCullough, right? This guy is the can't miss, it sounds like, addition for Oklahoma. So I think everybody would automatically start there. But if not right there, then – and that would be top of the depth chart for me, John. It's hard for me not to say that. Just feels like that's going to be proven production for Oklahoma. But I'm curious how the tandem of both Bothroyd and Ford shake out for OU, specifically Rondell Bothroyd, I think is going to have a chance to definitely impact things for OU. There's a bunch, man. And then offensively, for me, obviously, you've got Stogner, and we've got the familiarity there. I think he's going to be highly productive and should wind up as the number one tight end for Oklahoma, John. And I think sets himself up to, make some cash and get into the NFL and remind us who Austin Stogner was several years ago. So that's a massive addition for Oklahoma. It's not who I'm most excited about. I'm most excited about Andrell Anthony. Now, he doesn't have the long list of production, and we're not as familiar with Andrell Anthony. Really, there's just one nice game versus Michigan State for Andrell Anthony. But, man, you put that highlight tape on of that one grab versus Michigan State, baby. And with those wide receivers and kind of what the situation is there, I'm very excited to see how he fits into things, and can he wind up as, one of Oklahoma's top receivers. I think he's got a realistic chance to, John.
He does. I mean, everything's wide open on the other side across from Jalil Farouk and outside of Drake Stoops. Everything's wide open. Offensively for me, I'm going to go Walter Rouse. It's incredibly hard to find offensive tackles with as many starts under their belt as Walter Rouse has. Now, yes, I get it. Stanford was not a good football team the last 4 or 5 years. Granted. But Walter Rouse is a good football player. Otherwise, he wouldn't be at Oklahoma now. And he wouldn't have been so highly sought after by Nebraska as well. You got that experience that you can fill in at the left side. It helps make things so much simpler to replace your other 2 spots that you lost on the offensive line that we just talked about a little bit earlier in the show. So give me Walter Rouse. I know offensive line play isn't necessarily sexy, but hey, we're bringing sexy back to offensive line play. We're big fans of offensive line play on this show, Locked On Sooners. Defensively, since you took my guy Rondell Bothroyd, I'm going to go Reggie Pearson. I really, really am happy about the edge that he's going to bring to the defensive secondary and really to the defense as a whole. Like, physicality and aggression are kind of, what's the word? They rub off on people. That kind of stuff rubs off on people. It's influential when someone's going out there and just playing fast and playing hard downhill and laying hits, laying lumber. It kind of gives everybody else the confidence that they can do the same. And when we saw Reggie Pearson like nearly knock Eric Gray out of the game, probably should have been put in concussion protocol. We'll just put that out there. And then definitely knocked Dylan Gabriel out of the game for a play. Like, they brought that dude in. He's going to bring a totally different dynamic to Oklahoma's defense that I don't feel like they really had last year. You got somebody that's physical, that's fast, that's going to play with a little bit of aggression. Will he miss some tackles? Absolutely. That happens when you play with aggression. But he brings something that Oklahoma doesn't have in their secondary, and that's that toughness, that physical presence. And I'm hoping that that's just going to rub off on a guy like Key Lawrence, who I really thought was going to bring that last year and didn't. I'm really hoping it rubs off on a guy like Billy Bowman, who's flashed and been really good, but he hasn't kind of taken that step to becoming the player that we thought he was going to be. And I'm hoping he rubs off on Danny Stutzman and Jaren Kanak. Like, you got to have some physicality. You got to have some toughness, you got to have a mean streak. And I think Reggie Pearson, although he's a nice dude and very, he's a good teammate, everybody loves him, on the football field, he brings a mean streak. And I want to see more of that.
Hardest hitter since Perrion Winfrey on that one play versus Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
I don't know who else would be under that recent umbrella for OU in terms of they're going to go punish you. They're going to hit you hard, because obviously I'm joking here with Perrion Winfrey. That was an amazing hit, and I would never take away what he did on, but who consistently has been that guy for OU?
I think for me, in recent memory, Ronnie Perkins is the last guy I can think of that played with that kind of nastiness. You know what I mean? Like, he just had that he brought to the football field. I don't know if he was a physical hitter, because it's hard to have that off the edge, and you're not seeing him run in space and, make big hits, but just somebody who brought that kind of same level of intensity. I think Ronnie Perkins is kind of the last one I can think of. Now that's, recent memory, but biggest hitter since, I don't know. It's hard to compare him, to college football of the past, because everybody was allowed to hit harder back then than they are now. So yeah, it's a little bit different game. And so figuring out how to make a physical play without getting a penalty is kind of a difficult thing to do. Who else? Yeah, that's
I don't know.
all I can think of, really.
And that probably, it speaks to a couple of things, like you pointed out. It speaks to the fact that basically it's gotten legislated out of the game, to where, because you're so worried about that helmet to helmet targeting contact, you've been coached not to play a certain way. And then it also speaks to the fact that I just don't know that Oklahoma's had a lot of guys like that in recent memory, John, that are just going to go out there and they don't mind to lay the body on the line and go smack somebody, right? And hit somebody again, and then punish somebody right after that. And who knows, maybe Pearson could be that guy.
Yeah, Kim mentions Roy Williams, and that's the name that came to mind. But I don't ever want to put anybody in his category, because he was just different. He was a different player. He's a legend. You know what I mean? Like a dude that it's hard to equate with somebody else. Kenneth Murray, I just don't remember him being that big physical player. Now, I will say I did live in Ethiopia for some of the Kenneth Murray era, so I might have missed some of that. But what I did see of him, I just didn't see kind of that physical nastiness out of him. But it could have been there, and I just might have missed it.
DTY, Delaren Turner-Yell?
Yeah, a little bit. I can see that a little bit of DTY. That's my guy.
Safety sort of lends itself to being able to be that thumper, if I can use that phrase, hard hitter. Just because, again, you're kind of playing middle of the field, and you get some time to some of those throws over the middle of the field. You get time to be the guy that closes in and boom, like a heat-seeking missile, gets to run downhill and jar the football loose. So DTY would be an interesting candidate. Hopefully it is Reggie Pearson. They need somebody like that. Probably not to use the word enforcer, right? Because the connotations there that all of a sudden you're some sort of like bounty hunter out there. So obviously we're not advocating for that, but I think everybody wants a brand, a layer of physicality that clearly at times has been missing from Oklahoma.
Yeah. Hey, that kind of mentality worked well for TCU. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again on this show. That was the biggest difference between the Oklahoma Sooners and the TCU Horned Frogs, was the level of physicality and the edge and the nastiness that the Horned Frogs played with that Oklahoma didn't play with last year. They were just totally different teams physicality wise. And that's what Oklahoma needs to do, is they need to improve that area. Man, if Schooner Nate's right and RSJ is next, count me as thrilled. That dude, he can play fast and he's physical. So I'm really hoping that he does, get a significant amount of snaps at safety, because I do think with the way that he plays, it could matter. Ronell Lewis, yeah, big time hitter as well. Oklahoma's had him, but they just haven't had him in a while. You got to go back a ways to find these guys that can really lay the lumber on people. An Eric Stryker or somebody like that. So, they've had their dudes. It's just been a minute. So, but we're building something here in Oklahoma with the Brent Venables defense.
And again, I don't think it's, you're not trying to get targeting and get ejected out of the game, but I don't mind a late hit or two early. If it's like, hey, let's let you know that we're coming downhill and we're gonna touch you up a little bit today. We're gonna hit you, within reason, right? I mean, that's obviously a penalty. I'm not saying go take somebody's head off, but get downhill and let somebody know that we're playing a football game today. I'm okay with giving up 15 early, I think, in that regard, every once in a while.
Yeah, and I think as they get more familiar with the defense and the scheme, and they have a better understanding of all of that, you'll see them play faster. You'll see them hit harder. And I think it all just kind of comes together. And that's why this season is so important, is seeing these guys take a step forward in the right direction. These guys returning, especially the Ethan Downs, the Billy Bowmans, the Key Lawrence, the Danny Stutzmans, the Jerry Canick, seeing those guys take a step in a positive direction, because now they have much better understanding of the defense. Josh, any parting thoughts here before we shut it down here on another edition of Locked On Sooners Live?
No, just thank you to all of you. We'll, every Monday from now until we get, right smack dab into the heart of the season, we'll be having Locked On Sooners live. Occasionally, there's a Monday or two that doesn't work for John or doesn't work for myself with other work or life responsibilities. But generally speaking, we love having you guys in this thing. It's so fun getting your questions and your comments. It's one of the most fun parts of getting to do this podcast now for us on Monday nights at 9. But other than that, man, congratulations to Connecticut. Looks like they're on their way to a national championship in basketball. But thank you to all of you for all the Sooner love tonight.
Yep. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. We've got more content coming for you later this week. We'll talk more about prospects that Oklahoma's talking to. We'll talk more about softball and just the weekend that was for them and what they got coming up this weekend against Texas Tech. But that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Sooners Live. Again, thanks so much. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Hit that notification bell and hit that like button to let us know that you appreciate the content and that you enjoyed the show. Helps other people find out about the show as well. Tell a friend, tell a family member, share it on Facebook, wherever you do your social media stuff. Let them know about Locked On Sooners. But until next time, my buddy here is Josh Helmer. Follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. I'm John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. And the show is at Locked On Sooners. And until next time, Boomer Sooner.